Hello, Falava, and welcome back to a little bit of YouTube video teaching. The aim of today's lesson is just to go through themes again and a couple of activities just to recap and work through those and have a consideration of them, just to prep you for the possibility of choosing a themes-based question. So these were one of the pictures of themes from the board. So the main difference, just to remind you of themes and ideas, is that ideas are often one or two words, and themes make up a sentence. So those are them, and then I have copied them into your OneNote, and you'll find them pretty much all there. Some of you did, or everyone did, ideas and themes anyway, and you have your own page for that. So you can find them. So everything that we're doing today will be written out there as well. So these were just the themes typed out. The top one is in bold just simply because it kind of works to cover almost everything. So the lightness and darkness of human nature, or I think it was Arian's really delightful phrasing of the duality of man, or you can have it as the duality of mankind. Perhaps if you feel targeted at the idea of calling it man. And then ideas around inequality, cruelty of inequality, prevalence of inequality, the prevalence or presence of inequality. The impact of inequality allows you to look at both sides and look at where it comes from. The encouragement of surveillance, which I think you can count under control or power, which also comes under mankind and the cruelty. And then on the opposite side of that, you've got the importance of hope. So that's really important to look at when you look at things like Rue's death or burial and Katniss's actions in the games. And that's why it's important to look at not just the darkness of human nature, but the lightness as well. The importance of hope, the undying will to protect one's privilege, the power of love to overcome darkness kind of covers those two things again, or the battle of good and evil. It's a little bit cliched, but that one works as well. The healing power of love, anything like that. Those are a range. Obviously, you just need to pick one or two that kind of resonate with you, that you can understand. Everyone is going to have something that works for them better. All right. So we'll move on to the next part. What I want you to do is to pause the video in a moment and have a think about why we reflect on themes, why we study them, why we write essays on them. They're one of the key aspects of a text study, so I want you to think about why that would be. So pause the video and have a think and write it down, ideally. Okay, so I'm assuming you have written that down and you are ready to go. So here are some of the reasons that I think it is important to study themes. So ultimately, they underpin an entire text, which has kind of got a pretty big part of a text. They are a vehicle to explore the director's purpose, which is often commentary on society, the world, history, people, that sort of thing. As a result, if we look at themes, they are thought-provoking. So they allow you to intellectualize concepts. You see it in action, you think about that concept in action, and then you maybe think about how it applies to the world around you. They obviously impact and drive plot, but they also impact characters. We can see themes through character actions, but also we can learn about characters through our consideration of those themes, how different people respond or different characters respond to different concepts, that sort of thing. It impacts the interactions, the relationships, the conflicts that appear, and our understanding of those relationships or conflicts and kind of how that then travels through. They can drive emotive responses. Our ability to connect or reflect with the text is done through the themes that are raised. Obviously, you're going to have a slightly more meaningful reflection on a theme on inequality than perhaps one on romance, but still, nonetheless, it will make you connect and reflect on those topics. Life lessons could be gained from them, or just lessons in general, which is ultimately the purpose. And then there's this idea that when we read or view text, they are either mirror text or window text. So mirror text where they reflect aspects of ourselves, and window texts are that they allow us outlooks on something else. So when we look at the Hunger Games, obviously it's a window text to a different world, but it's also a mirror text when we see aspects of human nature when put under pressure or placement, and that sort of surrounding. So yeah, you might have some other things that are kind of intelligent, but we're doing a lesson on YouTube, so you can't tell me, but I'm sure they're great. Okay, this is basically your task for the lesson. So it breaks down from generally thinking about a couple of theme and a couple of scenes, and then breaks down to kind of one scene in more detail. This is just to build some reflection. Obviously, you can do this for all 3 scenes that you want to do, or 4 or 5 scenes, but to keep it focused, keep it like weight and accessible in our current environment and climate, you just have to pick one scene in detail. So start by picking one theme and then write down 3 to 5 scenes that show that theme. Now, I know most of you have done this already in class. We did this with 2 or 3 themes. You had to write down 2 or 3 scenes that showed them. So you can just copy that across. But the next thing that I want you to do is for each scene, write 1 to 2 sentences about how that scene shows that theme. I will show you an example of all this in a moment. So it can just be a brief description or brief explanation. You can go into more than 1 to 2 sentences for each scene, but ultimately it's up to you and your brain capacity today. So 3 scenes, 4 scenes, or 5 scenes, and a sentence or 2 on each scene about how it shows that theme. Just a light sentence. Doesn't have to be too in detail or in depth, but that's up to you. If you've got the brain capacity today, then go hard. Now, if you've done 5 of them, you just need to pick 3. If you've done 3, or you just pick the 3 that you've done. Think about that theme and what we can learn from it, or the director's purpose. So in that scene, with that theme, what are we meant to come away thinking or feeling about? Are we meant to think about a character in a different way? Are we meant to see a change or development of a character, a conflict, a relationship? Are we meant to reflect on how in that scene we learn something different about the theme? Is it meant to show us how to respond to that idea? Are we meant to feel something through our revelation on that theme in that scene? So thinking specifically about a scene, a theme, and what we gain from it. And then for one of those scenes, reflect on the world around you and how it fits into a bigger picture of life. Does it connect with the world, current events, historical events, political events, human nature, societal impacts? So that's what you're doing. The instructions are all in the OneNote. I'm just going to talk you through one though. So if you just hold fire, I'll do an example for you. So I've just used the theme of abuse of power. I haven't done 3 to 5 scenes. I'm just doing one for you, just so you can see what I want you to do. The scene I've chosen is at the end when Seneca is locked in a room with the Nightlock berries. This shows the theme of abuse of power because Seneca was being punished by death for what President Snow believed was his error. That would probably suffice as a explanation. But you know me, I can't just do a simple sentence. Him at the Capitol looked weak through his mismanagement of the Hunger Games. But this is not a crime, and the reaction of basically sentencing him to death by starvation or suicide shows an abuse of power and overreaction on Snow's behalf. It shows the intense level of power he has, but also the flagrant way he abuses it. So that would be me explaining how the scene shows the theme. You can just do something like that first sentence. I just went hard because that's how I roll. Okay, what can we learn from it? What is the director's purpose? What are we intended to think or feel? I think the director is trying to make us think about not only the people who have power, but how they choose to use it. President Snow has the ability to be generous and accepting, or even just to punish Seneca with exile or imprisonment. Yet he chose to assert himself in a violent manner. This reflects the way that people who feel threatened or weakened may respond to threats. It's not so much the act, but rather his fear of embarrassment or being perceived as weak, which led him to such a response. So I think the purpose there was maybe to make us think about power, how people use it, but also why they use it in that way. And so I think in that scene, despite President Snow not being there, that's the director's purpose, is to make us think about him and power, and therefore commentary on people in power. How does this scene connect with a bigger picture of the world around you? Ultimately, I think this reflects fragile masculinity. That was just me having a bit of a cheeky lol. President Snow is content to kill children, but he can't face any possible perceived weakness. Lord forbid. That was me possibly a little bit too tongue in cheek, but I think it does reflect perhaps people's insecurities and how people who are in power can be insecure. So I guess that's human nature. I guess that's the bigger picture. Um, I mean, it does everything comes back to Hitler in one way or another, but I think it is things like that where people, or Stalin or Lenin or anyone in those kind of strict regimes, how they respond to weakness and how they are really worried, even if you are in power and you are the most powerful person and therefore should be untouchable, you can't be seen to be weak. And I think that's seen through many historical events. So, yeah. Um, so that's what I want you to do. So this one's there. That's an example. You can pause and have a read. And then I have given you extension options. These are entirely optional. If you're thinking about like the best things to help you, you can watch a scene to make sure you've got notes on it. This sort of thing might form the basis of some essay paragraphs. Um, Write a paragraph basically, or research current events, historical events, do the same tasks that you just did before with a different theme, or perhaps something that might be worthwhile is so you've done a step for 3 scenes and you've done this step for 3 scenes, but maybe try and do this step for the other 2 scenes you haven't done there. So that's all. Merry learning. Hasta mañana.